this is going to be a little problematic, the fact that he has no lower jaw. We'll start here. So do you remember branchiomeric muscles are split up by the various arches, the visceral arches. So the first arch is the, not hyoid, mandibular, okay, then hyoid. So mandibular, then hyoid, then branchial arch 1, branchial arch 2, branchial arch 3, 4, 5, etc. So for the first arch, the mandibular arch, there is a sheet of muscle that runs across from one side of the lower jaw to the other, right here. It's very, very thin, and that's the same muscle we already saw in a shark, running from one side of the mandibular cartilage to the other. And what do we call that? Intermandibularis, exactly. So that's the intermandibularis. And then dorsally, dorsally we have skin on that one, but I have this one here. We have the jaw adductor muscles that are the only ones we're doing. And in the shark, we had the adductor mandibulae muscle. Here, there's two jaw adductors. Our book calls them levator mandibulae anterior and levator mandibulae externus. So this one, that's this big chunky one on the side, is levator mandibulae externus. This one that's more medial in here is levator mandibulae anterior. You will sometimes see them called adductor mandibulae externus and anterior. Externus, anterior. Okay. So that's the mandibular arch muscles. Okay. Hyoid arch muscles. Once again, missing the lower jaw. See, it's good. There's another thin sheet of muscle that is not really well preserved on this particular critter, but it lies right back behind the intermandibularis in this region here, and that's the interhyoideus, and we just don't really have it to look at, but it would be running across there. Dorsally, ooh, this one actually I haven't really looked to see if we can see this. Let's see if we can actually see this. Hold on a moment. You may have a slight problem. I haven't looked for this one muscle, and it may be hard to see on both of these animals. Down to the back angle of the lower jaw and pulls up on the back of the lower jaw, thereby opening the front of the lower jaw. It's pulling up behind the jaw joint.
What do mammals have instead?
Mammals, so that muscle is the depressor mandibulae, which is a hyoid arch muscle. Mammals have got that muscle fused to mandibular arch muscle to form something called the digastric muscle, and that opens the jaws in a mammal. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick snip through here and hope that we can actually see this. If not, you're just going to have to live without seeing. Depressor mandibular, that should be there. Where it hides kind of behind the jaw adductor muscles, and that's why it's often a little bit tricky to find it. Nope, there we go. Okay, success. So here's the jaw adductor here, the levator mandibulae externus, and if we look right behind it, you see another little muscle right in there. That is the depressor mandibulae muscle. Do you see this little guy? Yes, okay, got it? All right. So right here's the levator mandibulae externus, and this little guy right there, that's kind of deep to it, but behind it is the depressor mandibulae. Right there, okay. Good, I didn't want to skip that because it's actually an important one. And then if we go ventrally again, this big muscle that you see running along here, that's probably the most prominent muscle in the Necturus, is something called the branchiohyoideus that runs from the branchial arches to the hyoid. Okay. And that has a thin layer of muscle that covers it that we can see a little bit of. It's mostly been removed off this animal, definitely removed off the other one, but you can see right here, and it's like a little sheath that goes around the branchiohyoideus, and that's called the sphincter coli, which literally means the sphincter of the neck, and it's just a muscle that comes around the underside of the neck and helps constrict it. So that would be this guy right in here, that's mostly removed. But we can see just the edge of it right there. Okay, we good? All right. So those are the mandibular and hyoid arch muscles. Then we get to the branchial arch muscles. And go back to this guy. If we look on the side of our critter here, there's a little muscle that comes down. Oh, it's, a little bit better developed, but so it goes. It comes down to the forelimb off the back, and it's this little guy right there. You see this little one running along? So it's this little guy right here. This one is here is scapular deltoid. This is latissimus dorsi, and it's this one right in front there. And that is the cucullaris muscle. And you may recall we saw the cucullaris muscle in shark, also going down to the pectoral girdle off the back. And we're going to see it as the trapezius muscle in mammals.
That's the triangle one?
That's the triangular one in mammals, yeah. So that's the cucullaris. And then the only other muscle to show you is for the branchial arches. I think that's where we can see them better on this side. The branchial arches themselves have little tiny muscles that run down to them that I've kind of peeled off here. See these guys? And those are the levatories arcuum that lift up the branchial arches. So these little guys right in here run down to the dorsal side of the branchial arches. These guys. Okay. And that's it for Necturus muscles. So what? I'm moving forward. Let's do it that way. Protraction. Necturus really does do it more like that, though. And retraction. Okay. And how about this movement?
Adduction.
Adduction. And
Flexion, extension.
extension. Okay. Just checking. Frog muscles. Okay. So here's our frog. And looks pretty different from a Necturus. They're both amphibians, but these guys are pretty specialized for jumping. And so the muscles we're looking at here, which unfortunately are not ones we've really looked at the homologs in the Necturus because we ignored the pelvic muscles, but nevertheless, they're the ones that are important for frogs, are the hind limb muscles and some of the back muscles. So there is a long muscle that runs down the middle of the back of the frog here. It's one of the epaxial muscles that extends the back, and that would be the longissimus dorsi. And by the way, I guess I haven't really given you this terminology, but when we talk about the vertebral column, bending backwards like this is called extension of the vertebral column or spine, and bending forward is flexion. So this is an extensor of the vertebral column, the longissimus dorsi. There is a muscle that runs from the ilium to the lumbar vertebrae. So this one that's more lateral here. And this is the iliolumbaris or lumbaris, depending on who you talk to. This guy here. And then there's one that runs from the ilium, which is this one here, to the urostyle. And the urostyle corresponds to the last tail vertebrae, which in humans are called the coccyx. So this is called the coccygeoiliacus muscle, this one in here. It's running from the ilium to this urostyle. Coccygeoiliacus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm just checking with Katrina because she was looking like,
I
okay.
wasn't convinced for a second.
Now you're good? Okay.
So
Ilium,
it's like a
urostyle.
continuation of the longissimus dorsi.
Yeah, except that it's attaching onto the ilium on the inner side, whereas longissimus is running down like this and attaching to the vertebrae.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually coming from here, running to here, rather than just running along like this. Okay. Where are we? Okay, then we get down into the limb itself. And really big, obvious muscle is this muscle on the back side of the shank, running down around the ankle called the gastrocnemius, which literally means the belly of the calf. Gastrocnemius there. And that's a major flexor at the ankle joint there. Very important for jumping off. There's a set of muscles that lie on the front of the thigh here, and those are that together, all three of them. One, should be 2 and 3 there. All of these guys together are called the triceps femoris, which literally means the three-headed muscle of the thigh, and it corresponds to the muscle in us that's the quadriceps femoris, the four-headed muscle of the thigh, thing on the front of the thigh. On the inner surface at the back, the thigh here is a big muscle, and that's called, yeah, this is the semimembranosus, which is, am I doing that? No, I'm sorry, I'm getting it backwards. I looked at this for a while. That should not be semimembranosus there. Yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, that is. I'm just getting myself confused. That's the semimembranosus right there. And this is one of the hamstring group of muscles, so it's basically flexing the knee joint and extending or retracting the thigh. That's this one here. Okay. And we flipped things over. That was what was confusing me, is I somehow got myself convinced I'd already flipped it over and was looking at the medial surface. There's a big muscle that you'll see running down on the medial side of the thigh here, this guy. Okay. And this is the gracilis muscle, gracilis major. And then two muscles, one of which we've sort of met already, the rectus anterior femoris, is this muscle here, which is part of the triceps femoris group. But this one actually runs all the way from the trunk down, so it can act to protract the limb, whereas the remaining parts of the triceps femoris just attach to the femur, and so they only act at the knee. So this is the rectus anterior femoris right there. Okay. And just like mammals have a similar muscle, the rectus femoris, that runs right on the front of the thigh. And then the gluteus muscle, last but not least, is this guy right here. So this is a hip joint muscle that brings the leg forward in these guys, and it's running from the ilium back to the femur. So it's this guy here. Okay. And that would be it for our frog. The skin off of the breast region is this big muscle that lies on the sternum. And remember, they've got this big keel to the sternum. The wishbone would be in here. And this big muscle would be the pectoralis major. Yep. And this is the main adductor muscle, or downstroke muscle of the wings in birds. So this is what they're using for the powering their flight. And it's a big muscle. But if we kind of look deep to that, this is really not the most beautiful dissection job ever done, but we're going to look anyway. What you can see is there's another muscle that lies here, right along the keel of the sternum, right there. And this muscle is the supracoracoideus muscle. Okay. And remember, we already met this muscle in a Necturus, the supracoracoideus, lying along the coracoid. And it basically does the same thing in the bird. It's running from along the coracoid. It just runs a little bit further back onto the sternum as well. And what's cool about this muscle is if you look at its tendon, here's its tendon. You can stick a probe here through and see what's going on. This tendon pops through a hole right there. And that hole is called the foramen triosseum. And it lies between the three bones of the shoulder joint. So it lies between the clavicle, which in a bird is fused in to form the wishbone or furcula, the coracoid, which is the ventral part of this shoulder girdle, and the scapula, which is the dorsal part. So it's right in between those three, hence triosseum, between three bones. And so the tendon, what it does is it pops through there and pops up dorsally, and you can pick it out again here, coming over the top, right like that. Do you see this tendon there? And that's going to the dorsal side of the humerus right there. There's the, you see the tendon there? Okay. Try not to drip on you. And so this muscle, the supracoracoideus, even though it lies ventrally, it comes up through that foramen and attaches to the top of the humerus, and so that's the primary upstroke muscle that brings the wing back up and prepares it for a new downstroke. Okay. So that, I believe, is it for our muscles.